Welcome back to Gold Derby. I'm Christopher Rosen. So pleased to be joined by Dylan O'Brien, who plays Dan Aykroyd in Jason Reitman's film Saturday Night. Dylan, this is you're so great in this film as Dan. I've seen interviews with Jason. He's talked about how difficult it was for him to find someone to play Dan Aykroyd. I think this was the last
Right.
of the not ready for primetime players, right? That he cast. So I guess just like I don't know if you knew that going in, but I guess like what was your approach like when you went in, to audition for the role?
Um, yeah, I guess I didn't uh I didn't at the time know that it was the only role or primetime player role not cast yet. I definitely knew that it had clearly been a long time that they were trying to find the role because I had months prior actually like not even sent a tape. I thought I was so wrong for it. So yeah, that was kind of like the only thing I knew. I knew that several months before I actually did end up going in for Jason, I had sort of been like, oh yeah, I don't think I'm right for that. So like I'm not going to make the tape. And then months later, it was still open. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, it's been a really interesting lesson for me on this, not to like take myself out of any race because I deem myself not fit. You know what I mean? And like not to cast myself out of something. It was a big learning lesson because even throughout the process, I learned things that I guess I didn't necessarily know about myself or see in myself in terms of like similar kind of qualities that this guy had. And I sort of like unearthed them and found them just by way of this trust, I guess. And like, and also you just got to kind of say fuck it and throw yourself into it because you got the part. So, I wasn't going to say no. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna trust this and I'm gonna try.
What were some of the things you learned about yourself then that you like unlocked, I guess, having played Dan Aykroyd?
Well, I guess there's this like, unless I was just slowly becoming him just temporarily for the process or something, which I don't even know. I don't know if any of this is actually true or confirmed. It's all just like information that I would get from Jason, because he knows him so well. Um, I guess like this sort of um, not like aloofness, but kind of like relaxed, sort of like social nature, I guess, that like Jason very much sees in me. He would comment on that a lot. And I'm not sure that I'm necessarily a relaxed social person. I wouldn't like describe it as that, but I'm sure Dan wouldn't describe himself that way either. But I guess that's what I give off, which is hilarious. I feel like I've always given off different. I mean, I'm certainly like to goof around. I definitely like to joke, but I would definitely consider myself like a socially anxious person. I love people, and I think that that's like another thing. It's like a curiosity, I guess. I feel like I picked up something about Dan that I really tried to like focus on, and that I really loved about him was this sort of insatiable curiosity that he just has for like he's just a very interested person. I mean, you even just like take the origin of Ghostbusters. That entire thing came from his fascination with sort of extraterrestrial phenomenons, and possibilities and theories and things like that. You know what I mean? So like,
Mhm.
yeah, just kind of a to himself sort of interested and maybe odd an exterior not totally matching his interior vibe. I don't know that I ended
Yeah,
up relating to, I guess.
that's really interesting. You mentioned like obviously
Yeah.
Jason knows him so well, like did go like just was
Yeah.
in made movies with him like the recent Ghostbusters, obviously. So I
Sure.
guess
And he
like
and he grew up around him.
right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in terms of like you, I guess like in terms of playing Dan, I guess like how did you like how did you go about researching him? Like do you need to research him or like do you talk to Jason a lot? Are you
Mm.
watching old like I'm sure you've seen like we're talking about I'm sure you've seen Ghostbusters 100 times probably, right? Like so like did you need to go back and watch that anew with fresh eyes or like how'd you kind of approach that aspect of playing him?
Um, n no, I mean, mostly it was like in terms of content that I revisited or visited for the first time of his, like the really helpful stuff for me was SNL, particularly the early years, because I hadn't seen him perform in that way before and at that age. And then in terms of the other things that I was mostly soaking up, it was like interviews of him, his screen test, him. It's amazing because it's like I really became obsessed with the screen test because it's really 7 straight minutes of him improvising, and he's just unbelievable. He never even like flubs his words. He's so precise and he's so fast, and he cycles through like 5 or 6 characters that he created. You know what I mean? And he's just making it up on the fly too. And in a way that is so seamless that you almost take for granted. Like you're just like he's just making this up, you know what I mean, as he goes along. But it seems scripted and prepared because he's just so lightning quick and creative, and imaginative. Um, and honestly, stories from Jason too, just like genuine personal stories, even just from people in my life. Like I would tell people, who go to my bar or something that I was like playing Dan, and this my one friend who I know like who goes to my bar was literally like, oh my God, I went to high school like with his daughter, and one time we were like all smoking in her room, and he just like came in with like an owl on his shoulder, like literally just random little anecdotes that I could anything that I could pick up on in terms of that would give me something really specific to
Hmm.
hook into. You know what I mean? Like that would tell me something really specific about what an individual he was. And just kind of like he absolutely marched to the beat of his own drum. And yeah, it was sort of like a collection of those things that sort of informed me more um, for what I was gonna be doing in the film because it was always something that Jason wanted to, you know, uh, he didn't want any impressions on screen, and he didn't, he wanted to fill in some blanks for who these people were behind the scenes a little
Mhm.
bit, especially back then before we even knew them. You know what I
Right.
mean? Before we even thought we knew them.
Right.
So you had kind of free reign to discover new things. He wanted you to find like the weird stuff, if
That's so
anything.
great. It's obviously yeah, like one of the things I think is great about the movie is it's not like the impressions of these people. That said, I think your voice is
Yeah.
absolutely uncanny as Dan Aykroyd. And when I was watching the movie,
Oh,
like I was
thanks.
just like, holy cow! Like Dylan Bryan sounds exactly like I imagined Dan Aykroyd sounding. You know what I mean? Like just for like my whole life seeing him on like movies, I'm like, man, you get the voice and the tone of his voice and
Right.
the rhythm of his voice. Did that take a lot of work on your end, or do you just kind of like sound like did you think you just sound like him naturally? I guess like how did you kind of like land on
Um,
how his voice sounds?
I guess it's like, I mean, definitely takes like, yeah, I mean, I definitely practiced a lot, and I would just like walk around talking to myself, like at recording it all the time.
Hmm.
But I also just think with things like that, you do sort of either have it in your register or you don't a little bit. And I guess, I guess his voice is something that my register like was able to possess. And then in terms of his cadence, I feel like that was more of what it was. It's almost like he's a very well, he's extremely verbose. Like and again, like I was saying earlier, it feels like he never hesitates or like fumbles or stutters. So like that to me, it always I always compared it to like something very percussive, like and like very staccato, like in its nature. Like if you were talking like musically, you know what I mean? Like it's like a very clean drum, and cadence in that way. And I feel like it's very quick, but nothing gets muddled. It's very like acrobatic, if that makes sense. Like in his speech, he's got like a very like talented mouth, I guess, if that makes sense.
It does.
Um, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't know. That was kind of just the focus for me, and uh, it's so interesting too. I didn't know he was Canadian until this. Actually, I always thought he was a Midwest guy. I thought he came out of Chicago, all just based off assumptions, I guess, from just how he sounds. He does not
Right.
sound Canadian. If anything, he sounds quite sort of from the Midwest almost, and so yeah, I don't know. That to me was that actually was very interesting to me. I think between like Blues Brothers and like I don't know, him just being, a guy who came from comedy, Chicago, Bert's a lot of comedians, Blues Brothers, Belushi, you know. he plays a character in Tommy Boy where he has like this like kind of like he's like this Chicago sort of car salesman guy. I just always thought that he was from the Midwest, and he's not. He's literally Canadian, which is crazy.
It's pretty wild. Do you have like one of like I guess also like were you the feedback you were getting from Jason, I'd assume was like very strong and like positive, but I mean, does that help you too in terms of the performance? Like cause he knows him so well, I guess. Like that you're like kind of
Right.
that gives you confidence that you're on the right track, I guess.
I guess. I mean, you're never sort of. I don't know if I ever think I'm on the
Okay.
right track. To be honest, like but it is one of those. This specific type of project where you do just sort of have to go with it and have to trust your captain, and yeah, no, I was always sort of like, he'd be like, that was great. And I'd be like, there's no way that it was great. You know what I mean? Like, I would literally disagree. Like, I would just be like, that can't be possible. But I don't know. It's such an out of body thing, like playing, someone who actually exists, someone who you're quite familiar with, and someone who you never would have cast yourself as. So I think getting used to that feeling and sort of like embracing it as like a little friend along the way rather than fighting against it was key, and just sort of trusting Jason, and also genuinely the thought that really got me to shake that eventually, that insecurity, um, was the fact that I was able to look around at everyone who I had been cast alongside of and been like, wow, he did such a tremendous job casting this. So I was sort of like, well, why am I not affording myself that
Right.
same kind of appreciation or acknowledgement? So I should just trust that you know I'm a part of that as well, I guess.
How the ensemble is obviously great, and like I think the group of you, the cast, like the actors playing the
Yeah,
cast is so great. I mean, did that like yeah,
yeah,
like
they're
did you
amazing.
it's so great. Did you and I'd imagine it was probably a quick shoot. I'm just based on like how the movie feels like it just came
Yeah,
together very quickly. Were you but like
right.
was it easy to kind of create that chemistry that they obviously had and probably in real life like with your fellow castmates in this?
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing that's sort of like intangible. You can't bet on that. You can't like, test it in a room really, even though they do chemistry reads and things like that. You know what I mean? You never actually know if a cast is gonna jive until you get on the ground, and it's just the humans that have been assembled, and whether or not they get along is kind of a dice roll, you
Hmm.
know? Um, I've also seen casts that don't get along that make a great movie, and I've seen casts that get along that get along great, and we make something that doesn't totally hit. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So it is an interesting thing, the whole cast chemistry thing. But this was genuinely, I will say, I even spoke to Jason about this at one point, and he commented on this, so I know it was an intentionality. Is that there were no like egos on set, and there was like if there was any correlation amongst the cast, which it was quite a large cast, yeah, everyone just was really talented, and like there wasn't like a narcissist in the building, which I know that sounds funny to say, but I just feel like in this business, and especially like with that large of a cast in this kind of a movie, and especially dealing with comedians potentially, you know what I mean? Like I've been in rooms with big comedians before, who, and it can be personalities like that where they're
Hmm.
really like fighting for the spotlight, don't let anyone else get a laugh, and it's kind of vicious, and not totally like fun to be around. And so I really commend Jason and John Papsadera, the casting director, for prioritizing that, prioritizing like good humans as well as like a good cast, because yeah, I think he knows as well as anyone that it's this job is a lot of hours, and it's a strenuous sort of thing that takes up a good chunk, a very dense chunk of your life, in that limited time. It was probably an 8 week shoot altogether, but yeah, life's too short to be miserable all day. So I don't know. That was a really roundabout way of just saying that he it was a great cast, on
Yeah.
screen and off. Yeah.
Yeah. I know Dan has seen like he's tweeted about the movie or whatever you call it now, but he was very
Yeah.
positive about the movie, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
did you get feedback from him directly, or do you like what have you heard that he has
No,
thought? Okay.
no. I've still never spoken to him.
Oh,
Yeah, but I saw his comments. Like he's been very, yeah, supportive about the movie, which is great that he's like sort of lent that, to us. I don't think he would have like, publicly put his stamp on it if he didn't genuinely feel that way. So I totally, um, uh, I think the expression is like really authentic and it's nice. It's nice to get that, from one of the cast members. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't know that anyone else has spoken about it or commented, so it's very cool
yeah.
that he has. And yeah, it's it must be very cool for him too to see the job that Jason did with it. I mean, knowing him since he was so young,
Yeah.
and obviously having such a close relationship with his father, and so yeah, it felt heartfelt, which I think was really cool to see him have that reaction.
Yeah, and you're this is a big year for you. I would say creatively. You had Catio Lake, obviously, which is on Max, did really well.
Yeah,
Funny Boy, which is at Sundance, I think is coming out next year. And this film,
yeah,
all these are great performances, completely different performances as well. I mean, does
yeah,
that
yeah.
like obviously you don't when you shoot these things, you don't know they're all going to kind of come together maybe at the same time. But I mean, for you
No.
as an actor, does that like is it I don't know, do you feel different like do you view yourself differently as an actor now having had success in these three very different projects, I guess?
Well, uh, view of yourself is a funny topic because I mean, I guess these are things that I guess no, not necessarily because I know myself,
Right.
very well. So I think these are things I feel like I'm only even just getting started now, So um, yeah, I feel like I'm finally it's I'm in such a I'm so lucky to sort of be like, one of I'm fucking 33 now and to have had like the experiences that I've gotten to have in this business and to still be, um, fortunate enough to be in a position where I'm getting to do it and getting to have some say in these things that I want to like be a part of or challenge myself with or like lend my hand to if it's like a newer or younger filmmaker who I want to sort of like be on the ground floor with or just getting to be a part of yeah, just material that I haven't gotten to play with, I guess, so far in my career, so I feel very lucky and yeah, the timing of it is funny because Caddo Lake was something that we shot 3 years ago, and then SNL we shot it last spring, which was the quickest turnaround I've ever experienced. And then they both ended up coming out like literally a day apart from each other, which I was like I found very funny. And that's just how it works. You know what I mean? There's not always such a clean pipeline to distribution. So yeah, it's been interesting having these things come out in succession like they have. They're all things I'm really proud of and mean a lot to me. So I'm just glad that they've. I'm glad that Kato, found its way out at all. And yeah, I'm very excited for Pony Boy as well, which hopefully we'll be hearing very soon about like the first half of next year it being released in some capacity. But I'm really excited for people to see that movie because it's really special. And yeah, I'm just like really lucky to be a part of, I guess, yeah, this crew of unique little projects right now that
Yeah.
are kind of coming to fruition. Yeah.
That's really cool. And I guess the last thing I know, I know you're a big Mets fan. I know this, and also a
Yeah,
huge
absolutely.
Mets fan. It's like my
Oh,
whole
incredible.
thing. And I
Oh,
was
I
like,
love
what
it.
a year because he had these things in October. The
The
Mets are
best.
crushing it.
Well, what's so funny? I mean, I can already tell like you're a real one, so like I'm gonna get down with you on the Mets.
Yes,
But I was like, oh my God, I can never have a movie come out in October again.
you
I was
can't
like
miss.
having to go to I was like going to Q&As, during like the NLCS, and I was like, I can't. This stuff doesn't work. Luckily, it was only like think there was like one game in the NLD in the division series that I really would have loved to go to, and but I had a commitment. I had to, we had a Q&A that night or something, and I was like, I can't believe I'm not at this game. For other fan bases, it's like, if you're Yankees or Dodgers, it's like, it's every year, but for us, it's a special moment when it's happening. And then I realize how much of an insane person I must sound to most of who I'm dealing with in work, like work wise, where I'm just like, yeah, we'll tell them I have to go to the game. You know what I mean? Like this doesn't happen every year, and they're just like, I don't think that they're gonna understand
I
that you need to go to a Mets game. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was much lower scale, but I canceled so many. I had like a lot of friends I was supposed to hang out with. I was like, they can't do it. They got we're gonna be in the
Oh, the whole
NLCS. It's like,
the whole
yeah.
month, I'm like, I'm busy. Yeah, if we go to the NLCS, I'm out another week. You know what I mean? It's just like I know it's very interesting explaining
So
to people.
just briefly, then, how are you feeling about this offseason and Soto? I guess.
I mean, look, I'm so glad we're doing this. I'm waiting. My guess is he's gonna decide after Thanksgiving before Christmas. Look, again, it's nice to even be in the conversation. As you know, the fact that we're in on these guys all of a sudden, with this new iteration of the team is like unbelievable. And so, and with Soto, I mean, I think we have the best shot. I really do. Like, I don't think it ended in the pinstripes the way that he might have liked. I think we've got a better situation for him over there. He can be the guy. You know what I mean?
I know. Yeah.
Um,
I,
uh, I
I would
mean,
love
look,
it.
I,
Hopefully.
I could also see the Dodgers coming in and just like sweeping him away. You know what I mean? In which case, whatever, let's keep it rolling. That would like then I can't wait to try to take that team down for the
It's
next
so much fun.
decade. You know what I mean?
I
Yeah,
totally agree. Dylan Brown, I could talk. If everyone want to talk about the Mets again, that'd be great. But I had to bring it up because I know
I
you're
know.
a
Me
fan.
too.
You played Dan Aykroyd so well in Saturday Night, the Jason Reitman's film.
Thanks.
Your other work is so great this year. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks. I appreciate it.